Hello everybody, Trevor here, and welcome to my very first top 7 video. And for today's topic, we'll be discussing my top 7 favorite episodes starring Toby the Tram Engine. Now I was going to make this a top 5 or a top 10, but the reason I changed it to 7 is because Toby's the number 7 engine on the Northwestern Railway. And as you all know, Toby's my number 1 favorite character who used to be part of the Steam team because of his unique design and charming personality. I've had him for many merchandise including Erdl, Wind Railway, and Tomy Trackmaster, though I've yet to get him for Bachmann HO scale form, as well as his faithful coach Henrietta. Though sadly, he was never given a proper goodbye in seasons 22 to 24, just like what happened to Edward and Henry. If you want more information about that top 3 video, I'll provide a link to the description below. Now without further ado, let's get this video started, shall we? Coming at number 7 is Toby Feels Left Out. I've already talked about this in my mini review of it, and I'll try to keep it brief here. Toby felt left out because he wasn't told right away about the grand opening of the Sword Museum, and was worried that he'll be part of the display. But thankfully, Sir Toby had assured him that he won't, and tasked him to get repainted, repaired, and take all the visitors to the grand opening of the museum, much to Toby's delight. If you want more information on this episode, I'll provide a link to it in the description below as well. Coming at number 6 is Toby and the Stout Gentleman. Also known as Toby the Tram Engine in the US dub of the show, this is Toby's debut episode in the entire classic series. This is where he meets Sir Topham Hatt and his family for the very first time, though he was referred to as the Stout Gentleman briefly in this episode. His grandchildren begged him to take a ride on Toby's train, which Sir Topham Hatt was like, "Oh, okay, we'll go," and they all scrambled into Henrietta, much to the old coach's delight. However, Toby was unhappy because Bridget called him electric by mistake. He was proud of being a steam tram. Eventually, Sir Topham Hatt thanked him for the very nice ride, which does make the old tram engine feel much better. And for a fortnight, aka 2 weeks in the US dub, the children came every day on Toby's train, and on the last day, they were invited into Toby's cab by his driver and fireman. Sadly, this is where we get to the sad part of the story. When months passed, Toby had few cars and fewer passengers. And on the last day, Toby was informed by his driver that the old tramway, aka Toby's branch line in the TV series, will be closed tomorrow. Toby took one last passenger train before everyone said goodbye to him. All hope seemed to be lost until the driver woke Toby up with some great news that the Stout Gentleman decided that he would buy Toby and Henrietta and have them be part of the Northwestern Railway as their new home, which made Toby very happy indeed. Now the reason this is number 6 on the list is because, for one thing, this is Toby's first episode. Secondly, I've already stated in one of my videos that I think Toby's branch line shouldn't be canon to the TV series in the first place, because in the original Railway series, Toby used to work on the old tramway on the mainland, which eventually came to a close. And I thought it would have made better sense to introduce the old tramway in the TV series instead of giving Toby his old branch line on the island of Sodor. But all in all, this is a great introduction to Toby and Henrietta. It's definitely one of my favorite episodes of Season 1, that's for sure. Coming at number 5 is Toby Had a Little Lamb. Season 6, in my opinion, was an above-average season, ranking it to about a B+, though I don't think it's as bad as what most people make it out to be. Anyways, this is a winter episode starring Toby and Henrietta, who had to pick up a vet and take him to Farmer McColl's farm so that the lambs would feel better. Toby then offered to keep the lambs safe inside of Henrietta so that they could stay warm from the harsh winter storm. After the storm ended, all the lambs were safe, and Farmer Cole was very grateful for Toby's heroism. In all honesty, I really like this episode because it shows that not only Toby is a kind and generous engine, but can be a great hero. He even overcame his fear of the rickety old bridge, which eventually came back in season 24, only for it to collapse and be replaced by a walking bridge. I also like the fact that this is Farmer Cole's debut in the classic series. It's too bad he got a drastic redesign in Olagen's Blow. But all in all, this is a pretty good episode, and its message about generosity and care was executed very well in my opinion. I suggest you give this one an honest chance. Number 4 is Toby's Tightrope. This episode is a sequel to the season 3 episode, Mavis, where Toby had to keep an eye on his apprentice Mavis and to make sure she does the job right, much to the little Diesel's ignorance. One day in this episode, Mavis asked the troublesome trucks to bump her at the level crossing and tell no one she asked them. The cars promised until Toby arrived to take the cars away, and the cars decided to bump him anyway. When he reached the level crossing and stopped, the trucks pushed him hard, and they headed to a broken bridge caused by a torrent. Luckily, the driver put on the brakes hard, but Toby was stuck on top of the tightrope over the rushing waters. Mavis came to the rescue, pulled the freight cars away, and helped get Toby to safety. After the rescue, Mavis apologized to Toby and later asked Sir Topham Hatt if she could come down the line someday, which Sir Topham Hatt said yes. In my opinion, this is one of my favorite episodes from season 3, not just because it stars both Toby and Mavis, but I thought the runaway train scene and the collapsing wooden bridge was epic and intense. I'm honestly glad that Mavis learned her lessons in the end, and since then, she matured like any other young engine, which is why I thought Teresa Gallagher did a really good job with her voice in the CGI series. I suggest you give this one a watch. Coming at number 3 is Toby's Discovery. When it comes to Toby episodes in season 5, this will be my second most favorite because not only is it a great Halloween episode, but it's also cool that they introduced a new character named Bertram, even though he's just a dark brown reskin of Duke with Smudger's face. Though I can understand why they did this due to budget cuts. But if that's the case, why couldn't they recolor Sir Handel's season 4 model instead of Duke's? But oh well, beggars can't be choosers. Oh, and I thought the old castle, which was eventually restored, looked splendid. It's too bad that it didn't appear in the show anymore. Also, I have a funny feeling that Bertram's old line was originally part of the Minnesota Railway, which was now closed. If anything, I think they should have made an episode where they revived part of the Minnesota Railway and made it a heritage railway. After all, the Sora Island fan site came up with that idea in the first place. And that's another thing. I would have loved it if they brought back Bertram in the CGI series, just so he can have a voice actor and more character development throughout the show. And I don't care if he's a mixture of Duke and Smudger. I just wish he had a voice actor in the CGI render. In fact, Enterprising Engines 93 gave him a great personality in his own fan series, so I suggest Mattel should take note of things like that in the future. Number 2 is Toby and the Flood. With Toby's Discovery being my second favorite season 5 episode starring Toby, this one would be my number 1 favorite due to its intense writing, action, and music. I mean, it's such an exciting adventure. My favorite parts were the dam breaking apart causing the flood, and that Toby was saved by Percy and Harold from falling down a waterfall. Oh, and Toby's driver in this episode looks just like Ringo Starr, which is a nice nod to the first 2 seasons where some of the drivers and firemen resemble the drummer himself. So if you're looking for an exciting but intense adventure in the Thomas series, this is one of them. Now, before I get to my number 1 pick, I just want to give a few honorable mentions. The Super Axle from All Engines Go. I thought I would put this in the honorable mentions because even though I still hate the reboot overall, but this one has plenty of redeeming qualities like the mention of Toby's old tramway on the mainland, as well as the brief honorable mention of the Flying Scotsman. Not to mention that Toby Hadoke and Eddie Glenn did a great job voicing the character in the respective dubs. Signals Crossed. It would have been lower on the list. However, I did like this episode for its message about being careful and overcoming your fear of traffic, which I had to deal with every day of my life when I'm driving. The Inventor's Spectacular Bridge. I decided to omit this episode from the list just so I don't get backlash for liking it, but still, it's nice that they brought back the rickety old bridge only for it to collapse at the beginning. And my number 1 most favorite Toby episode is Heart of Gold. I've talked about this in part 2 of my top 15 Big World Big Adventures episodes, and I'll try to keep it brief here. When it comes to CGI Toby episodes in general, this is my most favorite one of them all because not only it was written by Michael White, who is one of the best writers of the show, but it's one of the best episodes in season 23. In fact, I consider it my second favorite of that season. In this episode, Toby was ridiculed for being an old, useless engine by a couple of passengers, but when a couple of thieves intruded into the castle to steal King Godred's crown, it is up to Toby to save the day, and he managed to capture the two thieves red-handed. And because of this, Toby was declared a hero, and the two rude passengers apologized for their arrogance. So overall, when it comes to CGI Toby episodes in general, as well as Big World Big Adventures as a whole, I highly recommend this one to you, your friends, and your family because it's just that great of an episode. And I thought Michael White did a perfect job with it. Now let me know your thoughts down below on which of these Toby episodes are your favorite. Do you agree with my list, or do you have your own personal preference? My next top video will be about my picks for the worst episodes starring Skarloey the narrow gauge engine because I've been getting a few requests on giving my thoughts on Push Me Pull You lately. And believe me, it's one of the worst of season 12. This is Trevor Davis, signing off.